Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. David? Mr. Failmetzger? Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Ms. Shafsma? Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here. Okay, so I would assume that you've all had a chance to read the minutes, and so are there any changes to the minutes that need to be made? No.
Move approval.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Okay, well, I want to welcome our two new members, Fred Wallace and Bob LaSalle. Welcome. Thank you for your willingness to serve. It's great to have you aboard.
Good to be here.
Yep. Went through a grueling interview, 2 weeks ago, so and glad you survived that. And so, okay, so we went easy on you at first, so now we're gonna ramp it up. And welcome, Betty. Okay, so I did not have a chair report other than I just want to welcome our new members. So we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. Are there any things that we would like to bring up from the informational items to the agenda this evening? All right. Then with that, why don't we move into our first our citizen comments? And it looks like we have several citizens here, so I don't have the names of those folks. So,
If you wanted to make a comment,
He's not.
you're not
here.
either?
I didn't plan on that.
Okay,
They're just observing.
they're all
of them.
observing.
all observing. All right. Isn't there a charge for observing?
Yeah, as much as you get paid.
Okay. Wow. We're good on that. So, all right. Well, welcome and hope you have a productive and interesting evening here. So, okay. So let's move on then, and we have discussion items. We're at item 7, discussion items, and John, or Nancy Ide is here to share with us some training information. So, welcome, Nancy.
Here. You board and commission members are some of my favorite people. I think it's a real challenge to find good people to be on our boards, and I'm just really glad that you've committed and taken some time, and your expertise is always appreciated. You know, you don't join a transportation board because, you know, you don't know anything about transportation. Most likely, you want to share your expertise. So we really appreciate that. And looks like we need a...
It's on. Laptop select.
This way. Push it this way. It's already over.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Nancy Ide. I'm the city recorder here in Oregon City, and I'm happy to be here to give a presentation on, or more like an orientation, especially for the new members, but it's also good information for the existing members as well as members of the TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee. Again, thanks for stepping up and being a part of our city volunteers. We always appreciate the citizens' point of view, and we want you to know that what you have to say and think is valuable to our city commission, and they take what you say and they use it in their decision making. So it's always a good thing to share and come to an agreement on what you want to present to them. The City Recorder's Office has recently completed an online video training, and this video, like 10 minutes ago, was emailed to you, so at least the link for it. So anything that we're not going to go over the whole thing tonight. It's too long. But if you want to take some time at home to go through the rest of it, especially for the newcomers, it may help answer some of your questions, or if you're not really sure what to do from there. I also want to thank my assistant, Kelly Burgoyne, the assistant city recorder. She did most of the design work on this and did a really great job, so thanks to her as well. So it is posted on the city's website. That's where you'll find the link in your email, too. Tonight, however, I will be highlighting a few aspects of the training that are pertinent to your committee and answer any questions that you might have. I'll be paging through this presentation rather quickly, but we'll stop on a few slides that it's mostly reading. But anyway, this is the table of contents. You will learn some about a history lesson in Oregon City in this video, a description of the type of government that we are, the City Commission's goals, which are in this book, which you've probably seen, as well as over there on the wall, a description of the various boards and commissions, not just the transportation group, but all the others as well. Some boards have special requirements to be members, and it explains that as well. And then there's also some training in here on public meetings and policies. So that's kind of just a synopsis of what this video is all about. And are you on the presentation view, or are you on your agenda? Okay, just want to make sure that the newcomers know how to flip the switch there.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of briefly go through these quickly, at least. There's just a little bit of history here on Oregon City. I'm sure all these sites look familiar to you, and you can read all that at home. There is some audio in here, too, but I don't have it on. So some of our great sites that make us who we are. Neighborhood associations, it kind of shows a map there. And this is kind of where I want to start, the boring page, where there's no photos. This is a slide that talks a little bit about what type of government we have here in Oregon City, which is it's a council manager form of government. It's more or less a melding of the political city commission leadership and then the managerial city manager experience. The city commission is elected to be a policy-making body, and the city manager is the appointed professional to carry out the policy and to oversee the delivery of public services. So, like making sure that you have water in your homes and that the roads are maintained appropriately and so forth. That's the manager's responsibility. The role of the city commission is not to make sure that happens. They're just to set the policy so that the manager can see that it happens. The City Commission does more things such as approving the budget, setting the tax rate, setting the annual goals and objectives, and then developing the community's vision. And that's done also with your input as board and commission members as well. The City Commission also hires the city manager and supervises his or her performance. And the City Commission's role is not to manage city projects, but to set those policies that provide guidance for the manager to get things done. So it's kind of the same with the board and commission members as well. Your role is not to manage the city projects. That's staff's job. Your role is to help advise the commission along policy matters. So that's where you can spend the majority of your time. I'm sure that you all have seen the TAC bylaws. The newcomers, maybe you haven't actually had a chance to read them yet, but they are available. And just a little bit more talk about the tax roles in the bylaws. It actually says this, and I'll read it to you right from the bylaws. The purpose of the Transportation Advisory Committee is to serve as an advisory body to provide advice to the City Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Urban Renewal Agency on the development of a city transportation system and other transportation and land use matters relevant to the City of Oregon City, as well as guide preparation of transportation plans and programs, including the Neighborhood Traffic Management Plan. The TAC shall have the authority to establish appropriate subcommittees, including but not limited to mass transit, pedestrian, bicycle, traffic safety, neighborhood traffic management, and capital improvement. The duties of the TAC are to review transportation issues that have been referred to the committee and make recommendations on these issues. The TAC also reviews and makes recommendations on the city's TSP. TAC members may also be asked to attend meetings that relate to transportation issues that may have an impact on the city. So, in short, your role is an advisor to the City Commission in areas of transportation and land use matters. Most boards do serve as advisory to the Commission, studying and researching various issues that are valuable to the Commission's decision-making. So that's just a kind of a brief synopsis of the council manager form of government and how the advisory committees fit into all that. Going through a few more slides here. 13. These again are the City Commission's goals up on the board and in the booklet. And if you want to pick one, you don't have one of these and you want to pick these up, they're in the back or they're right here. And they're for your. It goes into what some of the milestones are, the priorities that the City Commission has. And it's important for you, I'm spending quite a bit of time on that because it's important for you to understand what the goals are that the City Commission is working toward, because then that's where you can focus your energy and your time to helping to accomplish those goals for the year. So, we'll move along there.
Part of a larger team.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. I think we'll just read them really quickly. The goal number 1 is to build a sustainable future. Goal number 2, implement economic development strategy and maintain an environment for success. Goal 3, address critical facility needs. Goal 4, enhance the livability of the community. Goal 5, seek opportunities to maintain communications with citizens and facilitate citizen participation. That's you. Maintain fiscal health and long-term stability. And then in the book are all the objectives on how to meet those goals. So we're going to flip on through, get up to, there's all the different boards and committees. And then they're all kind of defined briefly here. Oh boy. Read all those at home. You even get a test or two.
Just the new folks, the new members.
That's right. Okay, so, and just if you aren't aware, TAC has adopted, well, in their bylaws, they talk about attendance, and just as a side note, after 3 consecutive absences, any member of the TAC within a calendar year, the TAC members will dismiss the members' attendance, will discuss the members' attendance and shall by quorum reach a decision about their continued membership. So if you have to be absent, be sure to let the chair and or staff know. If you have 3 in a row, they're just going to kind of talk about it to see what's going on, and if there are any extenuating circumstances, that would be considered as well. So that's just a side note. Ethics, not too much there for you. We're going to kind of bypass that one and go to public meetings. The Oregon Revised Statutes, the ORS, gives rules for conducting public meetings and maintaining public records. All boards and committees are called governing bodies, and some governing bodies, such as yourself, are advisory in nature, and others are decision-making bodies. And some of our boards are actually decision-making bodies, like the Planning Commission, the Urban Renewal Commission, the Historic Review Board. Transportation Committee is an advisory in nature. But all of them are required to follow the public meetings laws and public records laws. So this means that staff will publicize the meeting in a timely manner and will provide a location that is ADA compliant. and we'll list subjects for discussion on the agenda. That all of your meetings are open to the public, and unless a subject is discussed that is exempt from disclosure, then those meetings are called executive sessions, and you would break into those without the public present. I don't know that you've had executive sessions in TAC, but occasionally a board or commission will. Your quorum is 51%, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 7 members, so that would mean that you would need 4 members for a quorum. Since TAC is required to comply with the public meetings law, it means that a quorum of a governing body may not meet in private for purposes of deciding on or deliberating toward any decision on whatever it is that you're talking about in your meetings. So in practical matters, if 4 of you found yourselves at the same community event somewhere, you certainly can be there together. You just can't talk about any of the Transportation Advisory Committee members or discussions. If you're talking about a particular subject and that's on the agenda next week, or you've had an ongoing subject about something, you're not allowed at that event to discuss those things together. That's for a quorum where there's a meeting that has been noticed. So that's state law. It's not permitted by state statute. There's other ways that you can hold meetings too, and in fact we're going to talk a little bit about it right here under the email policy. I believe that staff emails you your packets and communicates via email with you, and all those communications from staff, that's not deliberating. It's not, the staff is not a voting person, so they're not communicating with you for deliberation purposes. They're just sending you information. You may respond if you wish. However, if there's something going on in your meetings where you need to discuss it, it needs to be done in a regular meeting, not via email. So that's another method where you could violate the state law on public meetings. If you started talking about a particular, let's say you're talking about a street light somewhere, and you wanted to see, Bob, you wanted to see what Fred had to say about that, and then Steve, you wanted to join in on the discussion, and pretty soon you've got an online meeting going on that has not been noticed and is in violation of state law. So what we recommend is that just use your email for communicating pertinent information about the meetings. Like, Steve, if you can't be present and you say, you email to staff and say, I can't be there this evening, and maybe even reply all so that they all know. That's not deliberating toward anything. But just keep that in mind as you're talking online. And another thing to remember about your email is that it's likely going to your personal computer. So if you forget and there's some deliberating going on and there's a public records request for that information, then your own personal email and computer could, this is in an extreme case, but could be compromised or could be confiscated if it got to that under the disclosure laws. So just the way to avoid that is to just not deliberate. So just use it for communication purposes only. The City Commission just approved an email policy. So if you want me to email that to you, I can send that on to you if you'd like to read it. And a couple more here. Protocol at meetings. While there's some guidelines for board and committee members, and then there's guidelines for citizen participation. For instance, board and committee guidelines are while the meeting is in session, members should not interrupt the proceedings or any other commissioner or committee member or a member of the public who has the floor. Those are common courtesy. Every member desiring to speak should address the chair and should confine him or herself to the question that's under debate. Try not to speak lots of different subjects at the same time since you've got the floor. Keep it to the subject. A member, once recognized, should not be interrupted when speaking unless to to call him or her to order. All meetings are streamed live on the internet, so please remember to speak directly and clearly into the microphone. And we also suggest that you don't turn off your microphone in between, during meetings. Just leave the microphones on at all times. And always remember that whatever you say is being recorded. As far as the citizen participation guidelines, we don't necessarily need to go into all those, but I did want to point out, where'd it go? There's a new brochure on speaking at a city commission meeting, or any meeting, basically. It's all pretty much the same. And these are now in the back, and if you want to come to a meeting, a different meeting, and speak, there's some guidelines on how to go about doing that. It's not as scary as it may think. What you say, how long you have to speak, identifying yourself when you come up here, that sort of thing. So it's just a little brochure for our citizen speakers. Another thing that we have created are rules of procedure for the City Commission, and most of them apply to you as well, and this document can be emailed to you if you want it to. The City Commission has established rules for all these things. Whenever you don't know what to do, there's a rule for it. It's very helpful when staff is asking that question. Well, how do we handle this, or how do we handle that, or it's all written out in the rules. Some of the subjects that it talks about are rules of debate. It just gives some training in that area. Public comment, how to speak before a body. The conduct of the public when attending meetings. Sometimes some meetings can get rather heated, and it's pretty much the chair's responsibility to keep those things under control. So it talks about that as well, and much, much more. So that's basically all that I have planned to say to you tonight. But if you have any questions, or if there's any comments that you have, we can all work together on answers. So, welcome again. Thanks for your volunteer time, and we really do appreciate all the time that you do give to the city.
That was very helpful. Are there any questions that you may have? Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Sure.
And that link is on the website, so we can.
I just emailed it to you
Great.
this
Perfect.
evening.
Perfect.
Check there and let me know if you don't have it.
Great.
Okay, great.
Yep. Good.
And I'll leave these here in case you want to pick it up. There's also, if you didn't already receive the manual for boards and commissions, there's one here too. So I'll just leave these. All righty.
All right. Thank you again. All right. Moving on to item B. John?
Okay, the Transportation System Plan update. As I think most of you know,
Stepping away.
I have stepped away from that a little bit just to manage my time a little bit better, and seems like there's a really good project team that's involved with that. So I asked Laura Turway to give me a little bit of an update so that I could share that with you. Hopefully this isn't repeat information for all of you, but I'm going to go ahead and read some of the items. So they're continuing to try to get the public involved in that transportation system plan. That's been a pretty extensive effort. Notices will be sent out, or a notice was sent out. If you opened your utility bill this month, you probably noticed that there was a additional flyer in the utility bill that covered the transportation system plan, invited property owners to participate, shared with them where the email address or the website address was to deal with that, or to start participating. The TSP will be represented at the 2012 Engage in the Community Expo on May 31st from 9 a.m. to 3:30 at the Providence Willamette Falls Community Center, which is located at 519 15th Street in Oregon City. There will be a community open house number 2, tentatively scheduled for June 18th, 2012. Typically, those have been here. I'm guessing they haven't selected a location yet because she didn't share that with me. Project presentation a presentation of the Transportation System Plan update will be presented to the Planning Commission on June 11th and the City Commission on June 12th. I think I'm still on the list because I did get an email, and I think you did too. An email was sent to the stakeholder advisory team members on April 24th. Inform them of the next Oregon City Transportation System Plan Stakeholder Advisory Team meeting, which is scheduled for June 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. at City Hall. Additional meetings will be sent out. Project team is continuing to create the memos. They will be posted at the website as soon as they are ready. So I've lost a little bit of track of that, but it seems like those memos keep pumping out. So if you've been reviewing those, you've been busy, because I remember about Memo 7 was when I kind of said help, or I'm sinking here with this effort. So if you're keeping up with those, good job with that. Today, an email was sent out to the SAT so the SAT is the Stakeholder Advisory Team meeting, and the Technical Advisory Team members today to inform them of the project team has posted revisions to Memo 6, 7, and 8. So those are available at the project website now. So I guess they're through those. I don't know if the different committees are through those or not, but sounds like the staff has gotten through those enough, and they've posted those up for the web review. So, like I said, 6 was okay, 7 is much longer. I haven't looked at 8, but so anyway, those are on the website now. The draft memos and the comments received on the draft memos will be used to create the final draft transportation system plan, which will be reviewed by the Planning Commission and the City Commission at a series of public hearings before adoption. And a hard copy of the memos have been sent to those who've requested them. So, John, are you getting those?
Yeah, I got hard copies.
Okay. I can't remember who else asked for those.
I think Jonathan got them.
Jonathan, okay.
I thought Betty did.
Yeah, but I have not received one. I got the first, up through 5,
Okay.
but not after that.
When did you get that, John? Because it sounded like the email went out today. I'm wondering if it's
Well,
still
I've had
in-
it for a while, but I spent some time looking at it, so.
Okay.
I'll just send an email to Laura real quick.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
John, is there any way that all of the citizen comments and stakeholder comments, do they have any sense of a trend? Any key things kind of popping out?
I don't know. That question just came up from one of the audience members, is how we're looking at those comments and through the interactive map and any other forms that they're collecting those, and I don't know that, but I can look into that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question of John on that?
Yes.
As we're looking at this, if we have questions, it's kind of a dilemma. You don't want to necessarily take this advisory group's whole time on questions, particularly as a relatively new member, or the consultant's time. I don't know, is there a third way where you can sit down with a knowledgeable staff person, and if you have 20 questions over 3 memos, just because some of them are just straightforward answers, or some way to get in a dialogue about some of that stuff?
So you want to have more of a dialogue than just submitting your questions, because my
Correct,
first
because-
thought was to formulate those in an email or a memo, but that doesn't give you an opportunity to get feedback or
Correct.
So to me, that seems like one of those things that should be addressed at the stakeholder advisory meeting, but maybe not enough time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably asking for more time than was allotted for that type of thing, but it's reading it the first time, not having read the other one from 10 years ago, and trying to understand why some of the priorities are the way they are and all of that. Some of them are just quick questions and a factual answer, and you just move on. Others probably more tilt towards strategy and the reasoning behind doing certain things.
One option that I could think of that I could offer right now would be you and I could sit down and talk through those, and those that I'm familiar with, if they're about history, maybe we could kind of narrow those and answer the ones that are pretty straightforward. The other would be, and then formulate, kind of further discussion with the appropriate people. So that's one option. The other is I can carry the question on to Laura and Nancy, who are really kind of slated with managing this project, to figure out how they're, because you may not be the only one with those kind of questions.
Yes.
So, how do we facilitate more conversations with people
Yeah.
who are so.
Might be a place for a work session.
Yeah, if there was several people on this committee that wanted to do that, maybe.
Yeah.
The other thing we
work
could
session.
that we could do is we could add this as a discussion item. I know it's a discussion item on there, but again, because we're not so involved in that, it's harder for us to answer those questions. So the other thing we could do is place it on next month's meeting agenda and actually ask Nancy or Laura to show up, or the consultant to show up. But that's, again, more of this group and not just the greater. So if the concern is the greater public not having an opportunity to do that, then that may not be the best way of doing it. And
Right, I was at this point just thinking about a committee member like myself wanting to get into it a little deeper.
yeah, so is that something you think would work, to have something in take 30 minutes or 40 minutes of our time in this meeting, or do you want something more?
That would be an option. I mean, maybe the one-on-one with you just to screen out a bunch of material too would be constructive. It doesn't take as much time.
Tell you what, how about if we, I was just thinking about this email conversation that Nancy just had about trying to deal with emails, but it is hard with only monthly meetings to kind of wait until the next meeting before we give you feedback. But my thought would be is if we, maybe if I can check in with Nancy Crushauer and see what her preference would be on how to deal with those, because John, my guess is you're not the only one that has that same concern. So how do we do that in a way that's conducive to available staff time? And
If you have that conversation and you guys decide on an option, you can just email everybody on this committee, even if
Yeah.
it was a work session. And as the chair suggested, maybe 3 people show up or whoever wants to do that.
Is your concern staff time?
well, for one, it's not.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, if there was kind of a larger contingency that just felt like the TAC meetings weren't providing, or not the TAC meetings, the TSP advisory committee meetings weren't allocating enough time to be able to have the kind of in-depth conversation that was wanted, then to me that's kind of a problem, and we need to figure out how to address it. And it may not just be one person. There may be a lot of people that are thinking that way. So I think you're a good your concerns are probably a pretty good representation of what's going on out there with those people that are paying pretty close attention to it. So let me talk to Nancy about that and see if there's other meetings that are kind of a little more focused that are coming up fairly soon. Because that's the other thing. You got all these thoughts and you're thinking about it. It's not real. If you're anything like me, you set that aside for too long and all of a sudden you kind of lose the passion of what you were thinking about or the concern, and you forget about them. Or even if you could take good notes, you just kind of don't bring the same arguments to the
I
table.
use pink tabs so I can go back to it.
Okay. Well, let me just have that conversation then with Nancy, because there's probably a good response for how we could deal with that.
Thank you.
But I still will offer, if you want to get together, and I'd be happy to give up some time to make sure we can kind of narrow that so that time is, if it's more of a committee kind of meeting, maybe I can help to filter out some of the simple questions.
Okay, let's keep the meeting moving here, and we'll go to. Are you done, John, or do you want to move on to item C?
Yeah. Did you note that pretty well for me, Kathy, so I won't lose it?
Yeah.
What I just committed to?
Yeah.
So this next item C is the traffic study at South End Road and Partlow Road. Playing a little phone tag with Kittleson Associates, but today they actually submitted a draft report, which addresses the question about pedestrian crossings at that location or near that location. The closest pedestrian crossings that are marked are at John McLaughlin School. The other one's up at the Little Minute Market or the intersection of South End and Warner Parrott. So last week we reported that there was a study that was underway, and they've submitted a draft report on that. I reviewed it and was not ready to share it. Just got some glitches to it, but or not glitches. It just I want to make sure I'm understanding what they're telling us in that report. So my intent would be to produce that report for our next meeting agenda. I think they've taken a good stab at getting that together and recommended some reasonable solutions that we can implement. So that's my
part of
update
that
on it.
was they had looked at the count during the off months or the colder months, and then they wanted to see that again during the more active months.
Right. They were
Yeah.
looking at pedestrian counts. They're trying to find months where there would be higher pedestrian counts than what they got the first time around. So they've
So-
looked at that information and
Okay.
and produced it in a memo. So I want to make sure before we share that with you, it's at least I don't see any problems with it in terms of not in terms of their recommendations, but just maybe some of the maps or the graphics or some things that I didn't think were as clear as they could have been. So we'll try to improve that and ask them to finish it up and put it in a final memo form, and then include it in the agenda packet for next month.
Okay, and it may be premature, and I'm sure, but just want to double check that someone is communicating with Tom Scheidemann was his name on that issue.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on then to downtown Oregon City parking.
So Kathy's included some email correspondence, some news articles. There's a fair amount of history with this. This is the other item that I think was there was some discussion about in the email that I was a little bit. After hearing Nancy, I just got a little concerned about how much correspondence we have in email, and maybe I'm over. But anyway, in the packet is some email, some news articles, some history there. Seems like a topic that is being handled at the city commission level, although you are an advisory committee, so there's an opportunity to discuss this item and provide. But I think the last meeting it was suggested that we have a
Work session.
work session, right? And so based on the email correspondence, based on some of the history, I think the consensus was we would either delay that or or decide not to have that work session. So other than that, that's I think the ongoing plan is to look at parking as some of the downtown improvements consider and are completed, and consider the parking study, consider a lot of the direction that the staff need to consider the direction that they get from the city commission on this issue. But I don't think it's going to make everybody completely happy. I think there's always going to be parking issues downtown, especially with ADA parking. So I don't know where that's going to land, but that's the update for today, and I guess, Blaine, if you feel like you guys want to take that further, you
Well-
need to.
Well, I think there's kind of a protocol issue too, that as the Transportation Advisory Committee, I sense that we're kind of playing catch up on this issue. And I understand that. I mean, probably, the studies were done and complaints came in from, or concerns from citizens, and then it began to go back and forth between the commission and some of the city staff. But it seems like as a policy forming board, that might have been something that we should have been delegated to in terms of, taking a first
Yeah.
go at that in terms of developing some kind of a policy, but not sure what to do with it now that it's pretty far down the road. It looks like the commission is wanting to more or less make a decision, or they're being asked to make a decision on some of the items, particularly with disabled parking. And
The other piece that I'm not sure, I was under the impression that whole parking study for downtown, which included the two-way traffic, I think that was before my time on this committee, but do any of you remember whether or not those topics were brought? Obviously, you won't remember, but do you remember, Betty, if
I
that
don't remember
came to the
any.
tax?
No.
The whole two-way downtown traffic seems like, that was all part of that.
I think the study was done in
Right.
2008, and then they kind of brought it out in 2009 and approved the plan in 2010. My sense of it, I could be wrong on this, but my sense of it is that, most people see it and they don't really understand until it's implemented, and then
Right.
they say, wow. And the only one that I know of particularly has been Al's Barber Shop, and I think that there's kind of a catch-22 because the staff is following the letter of the law, and in fact removing some of the handicap spaces actually is better for more businesses down there. So they're trying to please that. But then Al, I think, has a very specific thing. He caters to a lot of older people, and so they removed a couple of them from in front of the shop. So he's asking, put them back. Basically is the way I interpret it. And the staff is coming back and saying, but we're following the law. And so how do you resolve that? And it sounds like those are some of the things that the commission is going to have to decide, because it says that they have been given, even though they're following the law, the commission has the ability to decide, to be a little more liberal on those things. And so that's the decision they have to make, I think, is whether or not they're going to expand the number of disabled parking.
Right.
And I just want to add, I don't think the intent was ever to bypass the TAC. I think kind of what happened was just that it was such a hot issue that it went to the city commission first. And I have received a follow-up phone call from Bill Clure. He is Lieutenant Clure, and he oversees the code enforcement department, which is the parking department. And I think that he nicely wanted to make sure that we understood that they're working with the city commission and the city manager to put in place a policy that might some compromises. And I think that basically, I think what he was asking was that we let them proceed with what they're doing and, let them implement their changes fully. And then at that point, if we want to bring it up again, he said that would be a more appropriate time.
And of course, our goal is to be helpful. It's, so any way that we can be helpful in that and in those kinds of decisions relative to transportation,
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it was ever an intentional kind of a thing, so. So do we know when the commission is going to make those decisions or address that, or?
I am, interestingly enough, we have a slurry seal project coming out to bid. And one of the streets, one segment of roadway that's going to be slurry sealed happens to be 8th Street, which is right next to the courthouse, between 99E and Railroad Avenue. And so when Lieutenant Clerk called me, I was started asking, you know, we did that downtown study, circulation study, and I thought that we had put, that there were recommendations on a new parking plan, and I thought when we slurry seal that, and we have an opportunity to restripe, we want to do it the way the new parking plan said, and so anyway, you know, I talked to him about it, and he talked about how this ADA issue was an ongoing thing, that they were still looking at maybe putting in another ADA spot on 8th Avenue, but on the between Main and Railroad rather than next to the courthouse, leaving 2 at the courthouse. And but anyway, he made it sound like it was kind of an ongoing issue, and he didn't know when it would go back to the city commission. I also know that Nancy Bush was on vacation for a week or 2,
Okay.
so I don't expect it.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I don't expect it real soon. You know, a few weeks.
So
Can we give you can we get back to you with a
sure,
specific
yeah, not
answer
a
as
problem.
to-
In an email, please.
Okay, in an email. Yeah, good.
So what is John and others? What are your? My sense is that this is kind of, you know, really is the commission, and we should just step back from it.
Basically, that's what they
Well,
said.
I would agree.
I have a question that maybe it's already been addressed, but the overall downtown parking is a problem, and I was surprised from this report that there's more than 1,000 employees down there. That's a huge number of people that need to park somewhere. And has any consideration ever been given to utilizing the trolley as a shuttle system of some kind? Because I think the meter rates just went up, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
So it's going to be more expensive for those people to park downtown. yeah.
Many of them are shorter-term parking as well, so if you're an employee, parking on the street is not a good option. So the trolley is used during seasonal months as a shuttle option, but other than those seasonal months, I'm not sure that it is. I know it's not.
Well, my thought was, if they get the free parking down at the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center and shuttled into town, it would be a win-win situation for them and also for the overall city parking. I didn't know if that had been addressed before or not.
The good news is the same person who deals with downtown parking is also the one who oversees the trolley schedule and routes. So that's a Nancy Bush item, and so I think that's a good suggestion and one that they've considered. I know that's one of the main reasons why I think the city has been pretty supportive of the trolleys, is because it does help with downtown parking.
It's kind of fun.
And it's kind of fun, yeah.
Starting
And
up
it's
in
free.
early June.
Mr. Chair, just following up on those comments, so, for example, if longtime employees are working down there, or, excuse me, employees working down there park a long time and they have been paying for it, there was a cost involved. And so the trolley is just seasonal. And you have a downtown, I can't think of, economic development group, but maybe between them and the employees, you can figure out some way to get a commuter shuttle that would just shuttle between that parking lot and Main Street, and maybe do it for an hour and a half while people are arriving at work, and then an hour and a half when they're going home, and somehow they could help fund that, because they're the ones that are competing for the precious parking stalls, and a number of them have been paying for it one way or another, so maybe there's a possibility that they could get it year-round.
Jury. The people's on the jury. they don't get paid hardly anything. Peanuts. And they need a place to park. And they come from all over the county just to use that facility. You know, they're told to be there.
Are you sure? I don't think that they get a discount anymore.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
They don't.
That was
Oh, okay.
eliminated.
I thought you
Yeah.
said-
No, he said they get paid peanuts for their,
Oh,
as a
okay.
juror.
Yeah.
I don't even
you
think
know.
they get peanuts, do they?
You can't buy back peanuts with their money.
Yeah.
Well, they get mileage.
They're usually advised to try and use mass transportation. TriMet.
Yeah, but if you live in Redland,
Right.
Parking downtown is a conversation that's been ongoing for a long time,
Yes.
and I know there's lots of heads have been considering that particular concern, and I know shuttling is one solution. I just don't know the specifics of what the schedule is for that shuttle, how often it runs, what hours it runs, so we can provide more details on that as well.
Well, the tough thing is that we have a Main Street program that's trying to attract businesses down into the Main Street area, and in particular retailers. Now we have the courthouse and lawyers and a lot of service type, but they're trying to draw retailers down. In fact, we just are going to put our business, a retail business, on Main Street. But it really is. I would not go down into the deep part of Main Street, specifically because of the parking issues. And so, if we want to attract trendy retailers, that would be a draw to the downtown area. The parking issue is just going to have to be solved. But the typical answer or response when you talk about a parking garage is, well, it's $35,000 a space. And I say, well, that's true, but what's the opportunity cost? And so, I would think that working with the county, since as you pointed out, that they're the primary, they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. That maybe we could partner with them in terms of covering costs and doing that and building the kind of a structure that we need to service the downtown area and provide parking for customers adequately for retailers.
Since I've been here, though, they've been talking about moving. For 10 years, they've been talking about relocating.
Yes.
So, and they're a good. I mean, they attract a lot of customers. I mean, I think overall they're really good for downtown business. Am I wrong?
If I might jump in, well, I could say that the city of Gresham worked long and hard with Multnomah County to get a East County courthouse out on Stark Street, and one of the primary purposes of that, and that was in the Rockwood or on the fringe of the Rockwood area, was to help develop more commercial retail outlet and activity. Now, whether or not that's going to pay off, I don't know. The building just opened up recently, but that was the thought. But the population, the employee parking thing is I think, a big nut to crack on this thing.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, my comment wasn't disparaging toward the courthouse, certainly, but it was more that it has to be a partnership to solve the problem. All of the stakeholders need to work together, and so.
And I guess I'm not sure how.
Well, the courthouse, whether they participate in parking, whether they stay there or whether they leave, that's I don't know enough about that to really even, at this point, we're all just talking opinions, and I don't know those answers. I think if Blaine in particular, those kind of conversation I think would be well heard by our new economic development manager and the city manager, and maybe the city commission. But I would direct you to Eric Underwood first.
Sure. Yeah.
Because this yeah, I don't know much about the details. It seems to me like having the courthouse downtown would be a good thing for downtown right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it does create a bunch of parking issues.
Well, I
We're
do
trying to
think,
resolve parking issues. It's like, well, let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to, if you're trying to, spur development down or keep development going downtown, it's kind of like, oh, they're a pretty good group.
Yeah.
They draw a lot of
Yeah.
lot of foot
of
traffic.
people.
So,
yeah.
but I don't know that we can handle that animal. But this question about the downtown parking, I think we can get you. So just to confirm, we'll get the in an email a better understanding of when those meetings are going to be discussed and how, and then try to come up with or get confirmation on the shuttle option and how what the plan is for that as well. So we can definitely pass that through, since I don't know the answers to those questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can TriMet make it fair to Square like they did in Portland? It's more than fair. We pay more over here for TriMet than they pay in Portland.
Did they eliminate Fairless? I heard they were eliminating
Well, they
Fairless
do it
Square.
because of crime, but
I think they are going to eliminate it.
So eliminate Portland's, but give Oregon City a
Yeah,
Fairless
we
Square.
did.
Is that what you're saying?
for
That's
40
also-
years they've been.
Yeah.
I don't know, debate.
Does Oregon still, do we still have the 2 trolleys, or do we just have the 1?
We have 3.
3.
But there's 3, okay.
Well, any other, before we move on?
So, yes, it sounds like it's a really complicated process, and I'm wondering if maybe we should talk to the city council and see if maybe they want to volley it over to us first before they make any decisions.
Which issue?
You know, well, for the parking.
Parking.
Yeah. The whole parking issue sounds really complicated. And Eric Underwood definitely would be a good person to talk to, because all those signs around town, land of opportunity, there's got to be a place we could, have a parking structure. Because that sounds like it would be not the only thing you can really do,
Yeah.
So what about, like you said, the Fireless Square is going away completely. So I don't think that's a viable thing. But what about for Oregon City? Is it a fee to park anywhere downtown and on the weekends too, or is it the same every day of the week?
I don't believe. I know in the evenings there's I want to say 6 o'clock. Fares are no longer required. That's just for my own use down there. I don't recall on the weekends. You don't recall?
not
do you,
sure.
Kathy?
We don't have a code enforcement officer working.
On the weekends. That's
Yeah.
true.
However, in their budget is one more code enforcement officer, and I am not sure if that's parking enforcement or if that is, complaint enforcement, throughout the city. But the city has not to this point had anybody beyond working hours, working days, Monday through Friday.
Okay. All right, good.
Yeah, just, Mr. Chairman, looking at the material provided, you had the one memo was downtown parking update May 3rd, and they had a section on next steps. And with all the construction, things have probably been aggravated in terms of parking availability. So maybe just waiting for the dust to settle on that. And then looks like the primary concern is about these designated handicap stalls. So that narrows it down. We've just expanded it a little bit here, but need to define exactly what we'd be focusing on if we're going to meet. But maybe we should plan to do that in a month or two. You know what the downtown construction schedule is, right?
Yeah, it's provided here. So looks like a lot of things are going to. It's moving forward fairly quickly, in my view. Where did
Seems
I
like
see
the
that?
primary complaints have been about
We don't
how
have-
we handled the
we don't have a
handicap
Main Street.
and or
We only have the
disabled.
phase
And
one.
Yeah,
the other issues we're talking about are bigger issues.
right.
That
Long
can,
term.
that can happen a little long term. but-
Yeah.
Well, some of the handicap,
No,
is the time limit.
Are you talking about the future?
Yes.
Yeah.
Future.
Yes.
I can see a time limit.
Current project.
Yes. So, John, let's move forward here, but you'll get a time and let us know when they're going to meet. And
Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds like we
maybe-
need to summarize the efforts, more specifically, the efforts underway.
yeah, we'd be particularly interested in what policy they develop regarding that, and how they're going to address that issue. And
Okay. Got that.
all right, safe route to school program.
I'm kind of wondering if I should take this off the agenda, because I think that it's really being handled by some Holcomb Boulevard residents at this point. A safe routes to school program. Is
Correct,
that
and Jonathan's been working on that in particular, and
right?
there's a meeting coming up, I believe, at least they're working on one, but I think they're going to not go with the Safe Route to Schools grant program,
Okay.
and they're opting for a different grant program. So I think that it's probably good just to either bring it up next meeting or drop it all together.
Or maybe ask Jonathan to give an update.
You can give an update.
Yeah, that would be good.
On the other hand, since I'm new and others are new, maybe an orientation on the safe routes to school program and what's available, so people in other neighborhoods might be contemplating what they could do with the money if they could apply for it.
So find out if funds are still available. If they are, what the application process would be, and what's kind of involved with applying for a grant.
So just a brief informational orientation, 5 or 10 minutes. If you had a little handout, that could go in the packet too. I don't know what the interests of the other people are, but if they're generally interested, that'd be an option.
Right.
Are you suggesting that the staff would give that presentation, or Jonathan?
Well, staff probably. I mean, Jonathan can chime in based on his experience with it, but
Yeah, we can do that. I think most of
okay.
that's pretty readily available, and we might even try and see if there's someone that can come speak to us about that.
Great.
Although the one thing that I did want to go over, and it's not included in your packet, is and it's safe routes to school and this policy on neighborhood traffic control measures to me are fairly similar, because we're talking about how to better manage safety concerns, whether it be around schools or not. I mean, obviously the Safe Routes to School program is about safety around the schools, and but to me they intermingle a lot. And one of the things, so this next topic is development of policy for the city or for neighborhood funding of traffic control measures. And Kathy came up with in her search, she came up with an example of a program that Corpus Christi has developed for neighborhood traffic control devices. This came up because we were talking about not just speed bumps with these electronic signage and how we get neighborhoods to sponsor the cost of those, and help fund some of those kinds of devices. So this talks about not so much those kind of devices, but more like speed bumps, curb extensions. So I don't know. I haven't studied that. It looks like a good example of something we could start talking about. So that's included in this. What we've done internally is I met with some of my staff to talk a little bit more about where we think that some of the electronic signage should be installed. So I brought a very preliminary draft map in case we wanted to maybe at near the end of the meeting kind of lay that out and try and talk a little bit more about the specifics of that. It's not, we can get it in better form. It's very in very draft form. We haven't talked to anybody about it. It's really just been our own internal look at where we know of traffic problems. School zone signage, for instance, should we have flashing school zones? Where mid-block crosswalks, maybe we'd want to place these PED-activated or pedestrian button-activated flashing pedestrian signs at key crossings. Because what we talked about last time was developing that, kind of drawing some consensus from this committee about whether or not that information was appropriate to be then submitted to the transportation system plan group, so that maybe it would be included in the funding scenarios of and prioritized in terms of where system development charges, or for that matter, gas taxes should be spent on those kind of devices. So I brought it, wasn't sure, wanted to give you an update. The more efficient way to do that would be to put it in a map, include it in your next package. But that's the update that I have, is that we're looking at that internally with the idea of sharing that with you and seeing if you agree with our suggestions on priority and locations.
I think it'd be good to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to take a look at that, maybe during the good of the order or at the end, toward the end, and
Okay.
yeah, it'd be good.
So, John, I don't know if you had page through this. I was looking at page 22 in this sample. They had a cost-sharing formula
Yeah.
and criteria, which would fit the neighborhood contribution, or LID, approach here. And you use speed humps right now in town. So do you fund those 100% right now all the time, or do you have a funding mechanism?
No, we don't fund them. In the past, the city's contributed some in-kind services, but it's more on the analysis and help in getting the neighborhood to kind of gather their funding and gather their support for those. But other than that, our contribution has also been with regard to putting them back if we pave through them or have a project that goes through them, or to restripe them. The last one that we did went very well. I don't know if you were on the committee at that time, John, but there was a neighborhood that gathered. Of course, they were also a neighborhood association.
Yeah, it was a homeowners association.
Which really kind of helped because they had funding available, and they had regular neighborhood meetings that were kind of tied to that funding, and so that came together pretty good, and that was on Frontier Parkway. But that's one of the few areas where there is it's a homeowners association. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and but
It's
homeowners association or no homeowners association, we have a speed bump policy that has evaluation criteria. It's available on our website. We've talked about it with this group, and I'm guessing it's in our 2011 meeting packet, because I remember having that. I don't think we discussed it.
This group developed it.
This group developed it. Yeah, Betty was.
Yeah.
Betty's charge there.
Scott might have been here too.
He was.
So we've actually got a really good speed hump policy.
But there's no city contributions other than
Right.
providing
Well, it sounds like you
assistance.
have a good precedent set for how they get funded, and that doesn't need to be changed. I'm not questioning that. So
Yeah.
I was just looking at this. That's why I asked the question, being new. I didn't know if you funded them or not. So.
I found this. I did just thumb through it, and that that cost-sharing criteria was an interesting approach and seemed like a well-thought-out approach. Not having scored any of our examples, I don't know exactly how they would play out, but I like the idea of if the need seems very, very obvious in a big community, having a good community benefit, then it makes sense for the city to contribute a bigger portion of that. If it's something lesser and there's a small contingency of neighborhood people who feel strongly about that, it may still be approved, but they would have to contribute more of that than the city share. So, yeah, it definitely seemed like something that we might want to look at, maybe redline and consider adopting. That's.
And then finding out if there's any funding available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not advocating for the funding if you already have a precedent started, so, that's
Well,
good.
this doesn't have to include speed bumps. I don't know. This is an entire
Right.
package. I thought for some reason maybe a policy that you establish might include other less expensive options. I don't know that the speed radar signs are less expensive, but
I think they said that a speed hump is about $2,000.
you know what was more expensive than the speed hump was the thermoplastic striping. It was more expensive than the speed bump,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah, it is. It's expensive stuff. And
I think that they paid $6,000-7,000 for two of them.
Wow.
The
Well,
one thing this
yeah.
doesn't address is those electronic signage that we've been talking about. I think it should, and maybe it's just because of the date of this thing. Those signs haven't been around that long, but
You said those were about 5,000.
right. That's the speed signs.
The speed
I
signs.
think the PED-activated pedestrian crossings are a little bit more because you got to have, if you've got a PED button, you need all the conduits
Right.
To get those to communicate, because I don't think they're wireless at this point in time. So, you got to have connectivity with the PED buttons and connectivity with the signs. So, I suspect those are more expensive. But
Well, I really like the Corpus Christi report. I thought it was insightful, and the use of calming devices, and based on their studies, it seems like those are actually more effective in change. I was thinking of Kanema neighborhood, particularly. That might be an application where that neighborhood association could get together and do some of the speed humps or semi. Can't remember the technical term, but the semi. Not the
roundabout,
full.
small circles.
Yeah, the smaller circles and some things like that to slow traffic down. So.
I really liked how this talks about some of the things that don't work.
Yes.
I mean, I had a request for stop signs today, and it's like, the city is not encouraging a whole bunch of stop signs, because if you have a whole bunch of stop signs, then they become less effective.
Be drag races between the next stops.
Yeah. But I liked all these the things that you think might help, but they really don't.
Some of the psychology of
My favorite is
the whole thing.
Oregon City, we have slow children at play.
Well, the city of Portland put those little round things in the middle of the street in the district where I lived in when I was a kid, and the garbage trucks had trouble getting around. Figured a street like Madison Street isn't very wide, and put a circle in the middle, and having a truck or a garbage truck can't make a left turn. And he has a hard enough time just to get around and just go straight. Fire trucks,
Slowed them down though.
they run over everything.
I think those are traffic circles, aren't they? Traffic circles?
They took them out.
There's still a lot of them in Portland, though.
Yeah, there is.
The street I was on,
There's a few in Lake Oswego.
Yep. Good
So, other than maybe just a cursory look at this map, again, it was our first attempt at trying to kind of think about where it made sense to add, and this discussion went beyond the speed control signage to include pedestrian crossings and school zone signage. So maybe a little bit more than what we were originally talking about, but I just, that whole electronic signage, it would be really great if we could take a comprehensive look at that, and maybe through one grant program fund maybe our school zone signage, and another grant some pedestrian crossings, and a third grant maybe go after speed signs.
Would it be helpful for us to develop something like what or adopt what Corpus Christi did, or?
Well, not having studied it, I'm not sure, but it seems like a well thought out process. So, I mean, we do get requests for those. Like I said, the speed bump one, I think we've got some precedent, but maybe we could relook at that. I know that many neighborhoods haven't been exactly excited about having to pay for speed bumps, but there's a lot of opposition to speed bumps as well. And
Yes.
so I think in terms of balance, our existing program is pretty good. If you really feel strongly about it, and your neighborhood feels really strongly about it, and people in front of that speed bump feel really strongly about it, then you'll put some money towards it.
I don't think this would be a bad policy to implement something like this. I think that you're going to have to realize that we still have to find out if we can come up with any funding, and I don't think that the city's share is ever going to be 100%. I mean, I think this is going to have to be ratcheted back quite a bit. But, establishing a few things and a policy that give neighborhoods, something to strive for, or a goal.
Yeah, that's kind of what.
Their purpose was good. If when you read through, so many of their complaints are about neighborhood speeding, and I think there is they would be, those kind of solutions would be well received in the community. I think it'd be nice if our city commission felt passionate about neighborhood speeding, that they would give us a little more direction on whether or not this was the kind of thing that they were looking for. I haven't heard that, but if the kind of comments that they get are anything like the comments that we get on the phone, neighborhood speeding is a pretty big issue in Oregon City.
It is.
Well, and there maybe if we had some kind of a booklet, like one of the goals booklets, that we could actually distribute to, and maybe we already have something already in place, but distributing those to the neighborhood association so they can see what their options are as those issues come up, and that way they're coming to you rather than just saying, we've got this problem. Now they can say, this is the issue, and we see here what the options are, and so we'd like to talk to you about that, and so just a thought.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just try to narrow this again. By bringing this Corpus Christi example in, they kind of added a whole bunch of new options, and we were primarily focused on the electronic speed thing. So maybe if we focused on that after you show us your initial ideas and staff has another crack at that, then you bring that back to us, then that would give us two things that would relate to speed. So your current speed bump policy plus that, and then if somebody wants to go farther and explore all these other things, could do that. Otherwise it's going to keep expanding and become a huge project.
Yeah.
So maybe just focus on the two crossing, the school crossing activated or whatever you were talking about, and then
The
the
speed sign.
flashing speed sign, and just focus on that for now. I guess that would be my recommendation. Anyway.
That's fine. Did you want to pass that out now? Might be a good time to do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have small copies of it, so it's only in one big map.
Oh, okay.
So
Can you just put it on the table?
we can
could
put
just,
it out here on the table, I think, if we can lay that out and talk through that.
Bring that table full. We got a table back there.
What if I just lay it on the floor?
Yeah. Okay. Should we go back there?
We just look what we get.
Or
How about this?
Let's turn the air off. I hope nobody minds.
No, that's fine.
Fucking cold.
Hope you don't have your coat hooked on there.
What?
Hope you didn't have your coat hooked.
No, I know. Goodbye.
Betty, jump.
Yeah.
You got my back, huh? So,
And the wireless mic. See if it's on. Oh, I bet it's dead or a doornail. It's dead.
okay. I'll try this. So, obviously a citywide map here. We looked at a couple of areas. We also included that curve ahead sign that you guys were recommending we put in on Holcomb. So, on the Holcomb end of town, or Park Place end of town, pedestrian crossing and speed radar sign is what we were suggesting there. You remember we got into a little bit of trouble with the school zone because the school doesn't actually front.
Is that speed radar a permanent sign or one of the?
Either or, we didn't designate.
Oh,
So,
okay.
just thinking that somewhere along Holcomb, maybe at the entry to the city, that we post a speed sign like electronic speed sign that we have. And then the pedestrian crosswalk. I mean, if you notice about where the school bus stops, this is this area right here is our most problematic one. There's a bunch of kids that wait for the school bus right at that intersection. So, up by
That's my road.
Trails End Drive, well, you've seen them then, right? They
Oh,
gather.
I've been
right-
stopped behind the school bus many times.
Yeah, and they cross from the side. So that's kind of everything else down here. While there's pedestrian activity, there's sidewalks, not a lot of crossing activity down there. So that's kind of what we thought on that. We're gonna do this differently now. We've got several events at Clackamas Park, so again, a pedestrian activated signal crossing made sense to me there. We've also got the pathway and presumably future development. Now maybe that's one of those that's a lower priority because when they develop that, maybe that's a conditional requirement. But again, we think that would be of value. We've seen speeding on Washington Street, and the McLaughlin neighborhood's interested in applying for a grant for permanent speed sign there. So that's one. We've got a lot of correspondence from the business owner and even the support from the library about something on 7th that would be pay activated that would help pedestrians cross right there near the library and the Singer Hill Cafe. So that's one that we also agree would make some sense, and we've heard from the kind of the neighborhood that they'd like to see something there. The McLaughlin neighborhood also wants a speed radar sign on the downhill lane on 7th Street, so I've shown that one. I don't know how successful they're going to be at getting the grant for that, but they've applied for it. Barclay Hills, we've talked to the Barclay Hills Neighborhood Association about their concerns for the crossing at that intersection. Their concern is more about turning vehicles in and out of there. But our thoughts were that, one of several, it's not really a mid-block crosswalk, but it's a crosswalk, and could be the safety of pedestrians would be enhanced if we had some signage there. So just kind of keep moving through this. Lynn, we see a lot of speeding there, while this sign down here on 5th is very effective. We're thinking we've heard lots of complaints about speeding along Lynn Avenue, so an additional speed sign there. And then there is a fair amount of foot traffic.
There is
from
from
the
Pearl, where that bus stop is, and the school bus picks up kids on the uphill side on Lynn. They come running across from Pearl
Right
and
down
run
here.
across, yeah.
Well, we didn't show one there. We showed one up near Park, where Rivercrest Park is. There's a striped crosswalk at that location, so we were thinking that made sense for a crosswalk location, for a flashing PED-activated crosswalk. Think of the name of it. A.V. Davis, at A.V. Davis and Ethel Street, just because the Gardner Middle School and the little convenience store there, right near the Ocean City Evangelical Church, kind of placing again another PED activated. Maybe we could scroll this up a little bit. I missed Kenema, so I don't want to miss Kenema, but speed radar signs at both kind of as you come down the hill. Now, these are both ODOT locations, so whether or not ODOT would support those, I'm not sure, but we're thinking it would be good to at least call for those that might help address some of the concerns that we've heard from that neighborhood as well. Again, we've got it's not really a mid-block crosswalk, but it feels that way because South End has got such high traffic through there, but it's at Amanda Court. There's an existing striped crosswalk, so PED-activated signal there. The mid-block crosswalk at Chapin Park, PED-activated signal at that location. We just talked about this one, so Partlow and South End makes sense to me. We've already got the school zone PED crossing there, but we need to have the illuminated flashing school zone signs on South End down near John McLaughlin. Speed radar coming in on Central Point Road. We get concerns about that. We just put a new crosswalk at Leland Road, on Leland Road for Westland Park, so that's another location that Parks suggested maybe I guess we did get input for Parks on this too, so they pretty much acknowledged that they wanted those two locations. So, and this is there's a pathway to the school in here, so there's a lot of school traffic and school children traffic, and Claremont's got a lot of curvature to it. So our thought that maybe that would be another location for PED-activated crosswalk. And then more school zone flashers. So all the school zones that are on any kind of a arterial. We didn't have anything for Gardner Middle School, but it's not really on the main roadway. But anything that's on a main roadway like that's where we suggested school zone flashers.
Another one I would suggest, though, John, going back to Central Point, is Central Point in Boynton. There's buses that pick up not only grammar school kids, middle school, and high school kids.
Okay.
On
So more of a crossing, PED-activated
right, because they
crossing.
come out of the subdivisions on both sides. The high.
Yeah.
And there's anywhere from 12 to 15 kids. Would be my suggestion.
I need a pen. Is that right here? I'll remember that. I think we've covered all these. The high school, we've considered school zone flashers on Beaver Creek Road. That one there really should be up here. We talked about a 3 flashing signal on we'd need 3 of them on Beaver Creek Road just to pick up this Myers Road traffic. So this one really should be moved up here. And then school zone flashers at Gaffney Lane, or Glen Oak Road, where High School Lane is at. There's a lot of crossing pedestrians there too. So that was our first take on it, and that map just came out today. So, and this is draft. Not talked to the city engineer about it. I haven't talked to Nancy about it at all. Really, just trying to get some of our thoughts on paper so that we could talk about them with you folks. And then, that's a lot of signs. That's a big effort. So, how best to prioritize those is kind of yet to be determined. Whether we've got, that seems like a lot of signage to me, and fairly good coverage.
Look at traffic counts.
Traffic count.
Traffic counts, accidents.
Yeah.
Looks like a pretty good plan to me.
I like what's.
We'll put this in some form that you can kind of think about more other than this map. So we'll get it to you in your packets next week, and I'll have a chance to talk to Nancy about it too.
Yeah.
So, just out of curiosity, the process from here, John, would be that so you would develop a plan for that, and it would cover funding and prioritization and all of that.
Well, I think it's a we. I think this group this is the kind of thing that I think this group could focus on, and this. One of the issues with the Safe Routes to School program was just, not really having the staff time to kind of throw it at this stuff to develop these kind of programs. But I definitely kind of heard from John, and I think I agree if we could start with, maybe the speed zone signage and, work with something like this Corpus Christi program to put forth a proposal. And I haven't thought too much about what the approval process would be, but if we did it in a timely enough fashion, I think we could, pursue the transportation system plan and see if there's if at least they need to reference, a draft proposal or reference the work effort that's underway and something that the city should consider for future funding. But right now it's really rough, not almost not quite ready to bring to this committee.
Okay. So, okay. Well, good. I think it's a worthy project to look at for sure. Okay. So, any other comments or questions on that issue?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So these flashing speed signs, are they, do people really pay attention to them? I don't know. Because they think that maybe they have some kind of radar attached to them, they're going to take a picture of them or something, or are they more like this study in Corpus Christi was talking about, where people kind of ignore them, and if they're more expensive than speed humps, maybe, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, there's one on 82nd Drive, the flashing one that they push buttons on either side, and they do, light up, and there's a crosswalk.
Well, yeah, that's different. The one I'm talking about is, I think those are great, but the one I'm talking about is a flashing speed
Right.
sign.
Oh,
There's one on 7th, just before you go down that first hill. I don't know what the
You
cross
move them
street
around.
is.
Not 7th, 5th.
Oh,
Fifth.
Washington.
Fifth and
Yeah,
Washington.
Fifth and-
We just put,
Fifth in Washington, right, going down Washington.
They always fooled me.
I
I
slow,
always thought it was radar.
well, I slow down. I know it's not radar, but I slow down.
Too bad it wasn't, when you're over 10 miles an hour, a strobe flash would go off.
well, they do flash a little, they do flash a little faster when, the faster you're
It doesn't
going.
talk specifically about the electronic ones, but it talks
Just
about
the speed limit
signs.
signs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if,
Those are
because I see
static.
people all the time, ignoring that.
It also
So I'm just
said
wondering if-
stop signs were, too many of those became,
Yeah. Speed limit signs are static, and
Right, I
and the
understand.
other.
Yeah.
Fred, our thought on that is that they lose effect over time. But on the flip side of that, the one that you don't drive much, from what I understand, but I see drivers routinely hitting the brakes as they come down Lynn and see the first sign on Fifth.
yeah, almost on a daily basis I do, and it's a good reminder for me.
It's really about reminding people, not necessarily enforcement.
Right.
And you're always going to have, I think, I remember a couple sign locations where we had them when we first bought the temporary ones that were moving around, our mobile ones. And you could tell by the speed data that I think people were actually trying to see how high they could get the number on those. So it may have that effect. But I think that's like a small percentage. And really, it's, I think most drivers are just really needing a better reminder, and I think they're very effective at that.
Okay. That's all.
They were trying to see if it had 3 digits.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to poo-poo them. I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Does the police still have their trailer?
They do? Yeah, I don't see it
They
out.
don't see it out
I
anymore.
don't see it out much, but as far as I know, they still have their trailer. Yeah,
That'd be-
we don't store it, so I don't know. I think they struggle to man it. It takes some effort to get it in place and download the data and make sure it's operational on a daily basis. So I don't know how. I think it's upon request is how they're using that system.
So John, just so I'm clear in my mind, the next step you'll talk to with Nancy and with other staff and then come back with some kind of a proposal for us to look at. And
Yeah,
okay, good.
some kind of a work plan to get this, keep this alive and to a final product.
Perfect.
I don't
Great.
have
Speaking of, let's move on if we can to draft cut and pave policy.
So the policy's in your packet. I think this is informational. We've been in Public Works. We've been working with the engineering staff in Public Works along with the operations staff, trying to work on several standards. And this one we brought to you because we knew you would be interested in pavement cuts. But I think the main point here is we've got a pavement maintenance utility fee that you pay monthly if you're in a residence here, or if you're a commercial property owner as well. And we started building those projects in 2008. We report annually on what we've done and what we're planning to do. We just finished our 5-year report, so now we have a plan for how we're going to spend those pavement maintenance dollars. The idea would be we would do the best job we could to get that information to the franchise utilities, to our own utility staff, so that we can better, so that we're aware of what's coming with regard to pavement work. And what we committed to back in 2007 was to have a stronger standard by which we would oversee and maintain our new pavements. And back then, we were talking moratoriums, for instance. If we paved a street, we'd have a moratorium that you couldn't cut that street.
3 years.
Yeah, for a certain time period. And we've rethought that and realized that, there's emergencies that come up. There's reasons, new development maybe, that we wouldn't want to prohibit from cutting. So there may be situations where a brand new street may need to get cut. And if that happens, what's the standard by which they'd have to repair it? Because right now all we have is if you dig a trench down a roadway, you have to cut 6 inches beyond where you cut for the trench, and that's your patch. And we've seen plenty of failures because that's not enough. So this takes it to a higher standard. I'm not going to go through and describe it to you, other than the theory is if it's an arterial, so it's a matrix and what we call a tier system. So street classification, arterial, collector, and residential. Tier 1, 2, and 3. 1 is 1 to 3 years, 2 is 3 to 6 years, and Tier 3 is beyond 6 years. So there's this matrix, and obviously if you're an arterial and it's a new street, you're going to have to really do a good job with that pavement repair. If it's a residential street and older than 6 years, you're going to be looking at more of something better than our original standard, which is a 6-inch T-cut. We're going to take it to maybe a 12-inch T-cut. If it's in the travel lane, we can probably go even further than that. But that's the theory. The newer the street, the more important the street in terms of handling traffic, the higher the standard for repair. And it will apply to contractors, developers, franchise utilities, public works. So, we're going to be spending more money on repairing our streets as well, especially if it's a new street or a newly paved street. So that's what this is about. If you're interested in all those details, you can review it.
And the premise is that long-term it saves money, maybe more expensive as you go, but on the long term
It makes a good job.
Long term, it protects the projects that were built by funding that we feel that the community has willingly, adopted and has been good about paying, but they want us to be accountable for that. So we're trying to be, yet again, besides the annual reports, besides the 5-year plan, it's another form, in my opinion, of being accountable for those payments.
That's good.
A quick. So when do you think this is going to be acted on by City Council and become formal policy?
Right. We're suggesting it be a resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And we just met as a Public Works group on this draft policy yesterday.
Oh.
And so there was some comments that we needed to, that I've been tasked with revising and redlining and then kind of redistributing. And we're actually working with a consultant on this standard to see what other agencies we might model, and which try and pick the best from those agencies. So we're continue working with that consultant to refine this and adopt it relatively soon. So
By summer?
Summer.
Yeah. Great.
Is this the kind of thing, John, that you would like us to digest and come back with an endorsement of some kind, or
Well,
is this-
you are tasked with making recommendations to the City Commission. So, I think the kinds of changes that we talked about aren't substantial. They're, wording changes. We had a little bit of trouble, and I'm not sure that we can get through it, but the difference between exceptions and exemptions, there was a lot of hang-up on those two words, so I'm going to try and see if we can't find a little different way of saying those same things. But, there was some question about, for instance, the testing and warranty requirements. Should the city, on its pavement patching, be required to do the testing when we're the owners versus a consultant or a contractor who, maybe have good intentions, but it's not their facility, right? So do we pay? Should the city pay for that same kind of test, same level of testing, or should we acknowledge that we own that? We're going to be the ones that have to go back and fix that. So there was those kind of discussions, but really, for the most part, we heard from our internal Public Works Committee consensus that this is pretty close. So even though we're making revisions, I would think if we could get you to take a look at it and maybe make a motion to recommend to the City Commission that they adopt this, that would be outstanding.
so that would be acceptable to do that at our next meeting? That would be timely enough that if at our next meeting we had to give us time to look at it, or is it too short of a time period?
I think that's adequate.
Okay.
Yeah.
what type of material? Let's say if it's a concrete road. And, you take 9th Street, when they put the sewer construction in, they made a mess of that street because it was a nice concrete with asphalt layover. And now it's, you can see where they didn't put enough,
Right.
compacted enough, and it's cracked and sunk all over the place.
Yeah, that's what we want to avoid. So, we don't have too many concrete streets, but we do have some streets with the concrete
Base.
panels, base that's been paved over. Those are, in fact, 9th Street we're looking at right now because it's on our paving list and trying to figure out how to better deal with that. But yeah, this is more specific to asphalt. That's why it's pavement, but so it doesn't address concrete streets.
City of Portland, if it's concrete, it goes back to concrete. If it's cobblestone, you have to put the cobblestone back in again.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I think this does cover something about doweling. If you cut out concrete, you need to dowel it. But it's really like the details are more specific to asphalt than concrete.
Okay, so we have an assignment, I guess, for next week? And
Next month, you mean?
next month, yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
I approve it right now. I think it's great.
Yeah, actually, if your timing is tight, I'm ready to make a motion on this, but I don't know if other people had a chance to look at it, so.
That'd be great. Like I said, it's not going to change a lot.
Did everybody get a chance to?
Well, I just had one little thing. On page 8,
Okay.
the second line up from the bottom, it says, "The meeting shall be arranged with the city." Everything else in this document tells them who in the city to go to. I would think maybe it would be appropriate to say, go to the city engineer or her assistant, or who should they go to?
Right.
The clerk? I don't think so.
The city, and the definitions, the city of Oregon City and its staff.
The only thing I had looked at was on some of the, like in the opening paragraphs, there were some references to studies, several studies, and I wondered if it might be good to put references there.
Are you referring to the American Public Works Standard Specifications?
Right.
The second paragraph?
Second
says,
paragraph. Yeah,
Studies conducted by multiple groups. Page 2.
Yeah.
You mean like a footnote?
Yeah.
Either a footnote or parenthetical where the study came from. I think that would be.
Okay.
So thoughts? John proposed that we make a motion now. Are the rest of you comfortable with that?
So I'll make a motion that we approve the draft plans with the suggested changes and with the knowledge that staff's got a few technical things to clean up.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? And abstentions, so it passes.
That's great, thank you. I need to come more prepared to ask for what I'd really like to get, I think. That worked out really good. Thanks for making that motion, John.
Is it your birthday or something? I saw you
Last
what you did
week,
with,
last week it was.
I saw the standards with Beaver Creek Telephone.
You what?
What you did with Beaver Creek Telephone on
Right.
Molalla Avenue, and that patch was perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's a great concept, and I mean, I think the principle's there, and we support it. So. Okay.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes.
Let's see, not so easy to kind of talk through is this Green Street standards, and I think this came from
Jonathan.
Jonathan David, Jonathan David. So he was asking about where the city was with regard to Green Street standards, and at the time when he mentioned that, I was thinking we've also got low impact development standards that are being drafted, which are more about stormwater and how to manage stormwater. They're similar. They're very they kind of deal with similar items in terms of how to deal with street runoff. And so green street standards typically have low impact development, LID, concepts in them. And so we have been working on an LID standard for our stormwater manual.
LID, case.
Low impact development.
Okay,
Yeah, low impact development.
That's interesting because it's local improvement districts. It's
I know.
similar.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, he asked about this, and when I asked the question of Bob Cullison, who's our development, what's Bob's title?
Development Review Manager?
Development Review Manager. I asked him, where are we on our green streets and LID standards, and so he's basically saying that right now we don't have green street standards. We're referring them to Gresham's, and I would say Gresham is for the metro area, especially for agencies our size. They've kind of done some really good work. They've got a stormwater. Well, now he's their public works director. Over there, who came from the city of Portland and brought a lot of their. He was, well informed about a lot of their model projects for how to deal with stormwater runoff from the streets, and so he's been involved in a lot of Portland's pilot projects. So when he got there, well, they already had some pretty good initiatives moving forward, but I think Gresham's kind of leading the way for agencies our size. Portland's got an outstanding manual as well, but it's so complex and a little beyond what we're capable of, although we do refer to that. So Gresham's is a good standard, and that's what we're referring them to. So we don't have our own, and we're just kind of hanging on their good work, our hats on their good work, and considering those when a developer brings them to us for consideration, or if he needs solutions, we refer him to that manual. So I don't have a nice standard for you to make a motion to adopt, but this is what we're using.
Well, I wasn't quite ready to do that anyway. I just kind of looking at this, I've seen numerous towns in different parts of the country that have similar to a rural road section with a much shallower ditch, and they don't have all the complicated, what do they call these things, rain gardens and all the other devices. It's just, there's no sidewalk there, although it could be optional, and in residential areas, built-up areas, and so you avoid the cost of the storm sewer, plus you have adequate handling of the water just going into these shallow ditches that are in people's front yards. So it's much, much less expensive. So, I mean, I think most people think of those as a rural road section, but I've seen them in urban areas that are many, 70 years old, and they're great. The homes have nice driveways. I mean, people can park on the street if they want, but it's not like they're driving all over the shallow ditches to park. And I didn't see an option like this. These look like expensive options. One of the things I was wondering is, do they actually eliminate the need for storm sewer pipe altogether in one of these sections? It seems that would be the trade-off. You're trying to save money. Obviously, you're trying to purify the water before you dump it into a river, too, through a storm sewer system. But these look like they're high-maintenance nightmares, 3 years out. I drive to Gresham, and I drive on some Gresham sections like this, and I drive on some Happy Valley sections, and particularly the newest one on, I think it's 172nd in Happy Valley. I mean, there's crews out there working on the landscaping, like once a month. And it seems to me that you also have to figure out what the long-term maintenance costs are going to be on these options to figure out the sustainability of them. So those are two comments. Why isn't there a simpler, cleaner model with less concrete? And is there a cost benefit on, did you eliminate the storm sewer altogether so you could save some money, et cetera? That was my reaction to looking at this.
Yeah. I don't disagree with a lot of that. I think Oregon is, and in particular Oregon City, we've got soil conditions that will only take so much
Right.
water, and then you see
Very true.
runoff. And so a lot of what I see is problematic with just a solution that kind of puts it off the roadway and not doesn't include provisions for any storm drainage piping, is that when we reach saturation, which we do around here a fair amount, we still need, and often we'll need a full capacity pipe to convey that to the downstream system. Now, there's environmental groups that would like to see us keep all 100% of our
Right.
piping infiltrating into the groundwater to recharge groundwater systems, but it is a challenge to do, and it's a balance. I mean, and then there's the public perception. There's the whole Rivercrest neighborhood kind of is what I think of when you talk about more of a rural roadway section. You've got a fairly narrow strip of asphalt with some kind of a swale that might have some culvert piping that would get it from driveway to or get it through driveways. And what we get all the time is either we'll see property owners want to pave that front area for more parking, or they'll want us to berm so that it goes to the next downstream. They really don't want that water on their land,
Yeah.
on
Goes to
their
the
property.
basement.
So there is some education that needs to go into there, and it's a balancing act. We also have current planning codes that really are. I think our transportation system plan is going to look at different road sections that may or may not include sidewalks, may or may not include curbs and gutters. But for the most part, for several years, Oregon City's been pretty adamant about needing sidewalks on both sides of the streets, curbs and gutters on both sides of the streets. And, with those kinds of systems, then you kind of have to direct that runoff to somewhere. And that's either a pipe system or something like these that are fairly high maintenance. If we've got quite a few of these in town already. We've just put new ones in on 10th and Main, Beaver Creek Road, that one on Malala and Warner Milne. Those are all rain gardens, if you will, that absorb that. All of those have pipes underneath them that once it reaches a certain amount of saturation, rather than flooding the street, it overflows into those systems and then is piped away. So under kind of the a high flow situation, we're not getting as much treatment, but there's a lot of flow, right? And it's during a time of year that that runoff is pretty routine. During the drier seasons or initial storms, when the runoff should be most loaded with pollutants, it tends to go into those filtration systems and get filtered out. But we also see more maintenance with those, and that's something we're struggling to deal with. We're regulated now to build more of those. They want us to, they're asking us to build more and more of those, and trying to figure out how to keep up with the maintenance of those is a challenge that we'll have to continue to deal with. Higher stormwater rates probably is going to be the answer there to help cover some of that maintenance. But I hear you, John. I just, I don't have a good answer for you.
Well, you're right. I hadn't thought about the soil types. That would influence it quite a bit. Has there ever been a discussion about level of service, how fast you're trying to take the water off the various streets? The larger the storm catch basin and the larger the pipe, the faster the water comes off. But if it doesn't have to be taken off as fast, you can save money on that by having fewer catch basins or designing them differently and smaller pipes. So I've seen that, and most cities don't ask that question. They just take the state specs and do it.
We haven't asked that question either. Level of service for us is exceed expectations. So we're trying to do the best we can with
So, I mean, that's, that is a level of service question about street construction and stormwater removal that, normally is not discussed. It's a technical thing. Engineers pull the standards off the state and plop them in there. So, I don't know where you are in that process, but that's an interesting policy question.
Yeah. We are, I talked about that street cut standard or asphalt cut standard. We're also taking on several others, one of which was stormwater pipe sizes. We just talked about that one. And our standard for years has been a 12-inch pipeline, no matter what, no questions asked. If you needed to build a storm system, you'd put in a 12-inch pipe. Well, we've kind of come to recognize that we've got old systems that, for several miles down the system, it's 8-inch because it was an old sewer system at one time or another, right? So we're in built-out neighborhoods, so why we would ever need a 12-inch pipe seems kind of ridiculous in some cases, but yet our standard says it shall be 12-inch. So we're looking at changing that standard to a smaller diameter pipe that we still can maintain, get a camera in, can get our cleaning equipment in, but we don't need 12-inch pipes. So well, I think there's always tweaks to be made, and these green standards are changing more rapidly, I would say, than any of the city's traditionally public works standards. These are all fairly new, and they're
People are kind of experimenting.
It feels like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even with some of the facilities we're putting in, there's lots of kind of thoughts on how better to clean stormwater before it gets to the river.
How does it affect the blacktop under the road if it happens to push back? Like it pools up and like in a
Right.
storm or something like that, and it gets mushy underneath the road.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's yet to be determined. In our case, most of these have a drainage system underneath them, so probably less. But if we didn't put that drainage system under there, what would that do? It has potential to really create some problems for us. Because as I've told you before, if we can keep our pavements, or if we can keep our native soils in Oregon City dry, we won't have pavement failures. They're strong, solid soils, but the minute they get wet, they tend to get soft and mushy.
So, where are we going with this? This is a city of Gresham. Are we? Do we have our own standards? Are we developing that, or?
No, we don't have our own standard, and other than the low impact development standards, the LID standards for stormwater, that's something that's kind of in draft form, and we've been working on for quite a while. We're kind of on and off again with that one, but we don't have a green street standard, and I don't know that it's in our work plan to adopt one. I think John asked the question, and we're trying to give some information.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that's good. Very good. Any other questions on that?
We could just put the Oregon City seal on there.
There you go.
Gresham, on top of that.
there you go. We do that sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, well, that completes the agenda, and then there are some informational items there. Any discussion on future items?
I wanted to point out a few things on here.
I'm sorry?
I wanted to point out a few things on here,
Yes,
really, really quick.
yes.
Alita pointed out we're going to have, that they're, at the jug handle, they're working on the city's first roundabout. I thought that was kind of interesting. We don't have any. Main Street, you see they were going to be opening up 7th Street and Railroad Avenue, the intersection, tonight. And the new circulation pattern was to go into effect. So the circulation pattern in downtown is different now. And then the other thing is that we didn't realize it until I looked it up today, that McLaughlin Boulevard or 99E, Oregon City to Canby, ODOT got bids, and this is the very last item. So they got a $3 million bid, and they have a contractor who's going to start the work. They have to be done by September 30th. And so that is supposed to include changing Kenema from 2 lanes each direction to 1 lane each direction with a turn lane. So anyway, I just, in case you don't get to reading those, I wanted to point those out.
No, appreciate that. Thank you.
Did you talk about the Clackamas River Drive closure?
No.
That one caught my eye. We don't have, sounds like we're yet to figure out how we're going to close that. It says information on routing of traffic will be given at the next TAC update. So does
Oh,
that,
that.
so do we need to, is Alita going to be here to share that with us? Do you know?
No, she's going to give us an update.
Like one of these kind of updates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any agenda items that you'd like to recommend for the future? Okay, with that, I want to thank our new members and appreciate all the input and good input from everybody here tonight. And thanks to our staff. Great work. Appreciate it. So we're adjourned.